everybody. Welcome. We're just going to give everyone a few more minutes to come in, literally just 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for showing up on time. If you want, while we're waiting, do you want to comment where you're tuning in from so we can connect with one another potentially? You can even put in your Instagram or TikTok if you want. Hopefully, this is a good place for you guys to also meet each other. And yeah, I'm gonna give it 1 second more. And literally 1 second. Okay, so we have Nashville in the house, New Zealand,
Oh, New Zealand.
Annapolis, Phoenix, Mexico, South Florida.
I did a session with Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords. And I did the Tamatoa from Moana. I recorded that, and he showed up and he was like on like a long ass flight to get here and everything. And his sense of humor was so amazing. Like New Zealand humor is like one of the funniest things in the entire world.
Austin, Milwaukee. Okay, and also, do you guys want to comment something that you are struggling with as far as vocal chains go? Breezy's going to be sharing lots with you today, but just in case there's something on your mind that you really, really want to make sure that he talks about. Um, well, he may talk about it, depending on what to talk about. Okay, and then I'm gonna do just a quick introduction. Welcome to the masterclass with Greasy. As I mentioned before, this is not a beginner class. You can ask any questions throughout the class in the chat. And if I know the answer, I will answer it. And if not, Greasy will go through and answer as many questions as we can at the end. It's going to be about a 45-minute presentation and then a 45-minute Q&A. So you will have the opportunity to ask questions, but you can always ask questions along in the chat. Just in the nature of how many people are here, I will probably have you ask all of your questions in the chat at the end. And yeah, give it up for Greasy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Appreciate you guys coming and checking this out. I know most of you that know who I am are used to seeing me in much lower quality and less sober, probably. But I am excited to do this. I think it's cool. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a engineer, producer, mixer, composer, general social media idiot, like whatever. I've been working in the industry for about 15 years. I was actually just telling Size before we started this, the story. Basically, I did no engineering whatsoever in my entire life. I knew nothing about anything. And then one day I went to school, and I mean, 9 months later, I graduated and went to East West. So I went from zero engineering knowledge whatsoever to working on like Chili Pepper sessions in 9 months. And I just kind of got engineering, so it was very cool for me to start out at somewhere like East West because it was just such great opportunity there. It was a really cool situation, and immediately started working with like the best artists in the world. So I did that for several years. Then I went and I was Alex Kidd's engineer for about a year, and I worked on like Imagine Dragons and what's that, X Ambassadors and Skylar Grey, all sorts of artists he had. Worked with a lot of writers at that time because he was doing writing days every day. So I tracked vocals relentlessly for that year, talking 6, 7 days a week, and 12 hours every single day. And so I probably did in that time, sometimes like double sessions and stuff. I bet I did like 300 vocal sessions in a year pretty easily. I didn't take much time off. So after I did that, I felt like I really understood the recording side of vocals very well. But I continued on doing stuff. And then just most recently, I did this record right here that you probably can't see, but Killer Mike's Michael, which won all of the rap categories at the Grammys this year. It was a really cool project, got to do a lot of cool stuff. This whole time I've been mixing on the side. Like I've always considered myself a tracking engineer, but I kind of think that like no matter what, if you can get the front end right, then the back end is the easy part, you know? So I started mixing maybe like 4 or 5 years into my career pretty heavily, and now I probably mix about 300 to 400 songs a year, still in addition to pretty much tracking constantly. So I do a lot of vocals, especially now. That's the thing that everybody needs the most. You know, it's like everybody can record their own vocals, but nobody seems to be able to get that like professional sound that everybody's always talking about. So that's why so many people reach out to me for that. And I just do a lot of stuff in that area. But that being said, this is a vocal heavy class, and I'm going to try and focus on that. But I also believe a huge part of mixing vocals correctly is often like having good composition in the beginning, having good tracking in the beginning, because what I'm starting with here for this record, I have two things. I'll try and show you the second thing too, which is a finished mix that I've done recently. But we're going to start from nothing with this track that Side sent me. And what you're looking at on the screen here, I've taken the liberty of getting into organizing, because I think that organizing is the most important part that you could possibly have in a mix. Like having good organization and having everything together is the, you know, I'll be able to mix this song. It's short. It's like a 2-minute song or whatever, but I will be able to mix this song in probably 30 minutes, if like to a reasonable level. And if it's not in, like, I've had sessions where I get mixes from people and I spend a day organizing what they sent. So all of her tracks are named when she sent them to me, which is very helpful. But one thing that's very annoying is that Ableton and Logic both give this long name for everything. Whenever you export it, it's got to be like the track. It's got to, so it's like every single track when I imported these said, you know, ready for me, vocals, email 2-02 on all of the track headers. So the first thing I did, which you could do this in the, you know, in the Finder window too, but first thing I did was just delete all the extra name information in the track, and you'll be surprised how much that can help you whenever you're like doing shit, because a lot of this is like when you're looking for a specific part and you're digging through 30 or 40 different parts, soloing them up to try and figure out what they are, it just starts wearing you down. The more times you listen to a song when you're mixing it, the more everything is going to feel like it's going to just abuse your senses. You're going to be like desensitized to all these things. You want to like shoot for, when mixing a song, like listen to it once starting off and then immediately start sectioning off things, and don't listen to the whole thing again too many times, and don't stick on too many parts for too long either, because you get desensitized to them and then you start ignoring important information that you're not hearing anymore because you're just used to it. So I try to shoot for whenever I'm doing a mix to never listen to it more than, I don't know, 20 times total before I get to like final mix area. And what I mean by that is like everything is in a place, everything sounds good where it's at. There's like no automation, but probably like EQ'd everything and in its own place, and all like the panning has been done and everything. Then you can start listening to the whole composition and be like, okay, these are my first initial thoughts. That's what I'm going to tackle. But let me just jump into this and I'll explain a little bit about my layout here. Now, this is obviously Pro Tools, if you do not know, but this is all applicable in any DAW that you work in. You know, there's like, the concept is, the way that I mix is everything kind of based upon analog mixing, the way we used to do analog mixing anyways, which is like a lot of buses, a lot of auxes, a lot of routing things to specific places and using sends a lot of times. But that being said, I also will throw a lot of plugins on a track if I need to, and that's the right thing to do. But starting off, usually this is how it'll look. These are all the lead vocals for the hooks, and they're all routed to one lead aux right here. And then there's this octave, low octave, that's happening in here that I wanted to treat differently than all the other backgrounds and stuff. So I did send it to its own aux. To be very honest, a lot of times I would not do that, but I'm making a point out of it. But depending on the situation, I might do, an aux on this anyway. Sometimes it's like, why even do an aux? You can put everything on the channel. You're not affecting anything else. There's not another octave vocal that I need to put down there. But usually I'll find something useful about putting it on an aux anyways. Same with this down here. These are doubles. Make my resolution a little bigger. These are all doubles. And then these are, I think, harmonies. Yeah. So, and then this is the main verse, and it's just a single vocal, and it's harmony, and that is going to one single aux all by itself. Usually, soon as I start, I'll give you just a listen to this because I've actually heard it. So this is what we're listening. Actually, I'll skip through because we're a lot to talk about and limited time. So I'll get to the point. All right, here is what the hook sounds like. You can bet 'em at the last light, half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night. So you can hear there's like a good stack of vocals going on in here, and then the verses are again just a solo vocal with harmony. The one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it. Cool. So you get the gist. It's a single vocal in there. There's some harmonies. Now, one thing you'll notice, first off, I haven't done any panning or anything yet, but everything was bounced left and right and everything. But I have not done any panning, and I haven't changed any levels yet. Nothing. This is what the only thing I changed is up here. The actual beat that she sent, I dropped it down 6 dB, and I do that almost religiously when somebody sends a beat because almost always the beat has been mastered before it was sent to me, and so or has some sort of limiting on it. So you're almost guaranteed to never put a beat in and it not immediately need to be turned down in comparison to the vocals. I'd say 99% of the time that's the case. So that's the first thing I do. But other than that, I haven't panned anything. I haven't moved anything. I haven't this is good stems. This is good multi-tracks from somebody. And that is, again, part of like having a really good mix. The less of this, like everything's all over the place and like nothing makes sense. It's all named weird and I got to figure out what they're doing. This is bounced at a level that sounds good immediately. All the levels across it sound good. And a lot of times if like I'm working with somebody who doesn't like know a lot about engineering and they're sending me stems, I'll tell them like just bounce it with whatever you have on there. I don't care, but I will work with what's there, but just try and do it in a way that I have like, individual track. But if you put a bunch of EQs and all sorts of stuff on that, you probably are setting levels that are going to make me get closer to what I need to be at rather than, you turn it up like 7 dB and then put 7 compressors on it stuff. It's like it's going to be balanced a little bit at least to start with. And also I don't, if somebody was listening to it away, I'm not going to try and undo all their work. I just want to make their work better, which usually you can do without having to take all their plugins off and start from scratch. So anyway, very good stems, these multi-track stems. I'm not big on that debate. I don't give a shit. It's just a word. But these are really good. Now, starting off with the beat, the first thing I'm going to do, knowing where I'm at, and this will be an over dramatic move, but I will put on a Pro Q3 on the beat as well. And just start by dipping out more mid-range than I probably like low to mid-range. This is at like 500. Once I hear where the vocal's at, I know there's a male and a female vocal, so probably add a little bit up here. This isn't a permanent thing. I will go back at the end and do this, but starting off with this, you're going to give your vocal a space to sit in immediately, and it's going to make everything easier to make decisions with, knowing that the beat has that area taken out. A lot of people, when they make their beats, they're not mixing their beat with their vocal in mind. In fact, most people aren't even thinking about the beats at all at any given time. They are the vocal at all with the beat, in concern to the beat. Because like they make this thing and then they send it off to people, and then who knows whose vocal is on it. So they don't cut any space out for a vocal. And if there is any space, it's only from composition. So that's the first thing I do. It'll give the vocal a lot more space to start making decisions with. You can bet 'em at the last slide, half mile. Here's the difference already. You can bet 'em at the last slide, half mile away. You can bet 'em at the last slide, half mile away. You can hear how much like the low harmonies and everything still are like sitting in your ears, and you can hear all that space, and it makes a huge difference for how you're going to pan things, how you're going to do everything. So first step. All right, after this, I'd say the next thing that I'm going to get to is tuning and vocal line really quick. I'm not going to over tune this whole thing because it already sounds really good, but I'm going to show a few things about tuning and vocal lining that will at least help in some concern. If you've never used Vocaline, I'm a big advocate for it because I hate doing extra work that I don't need to do. And I'm gonna come down here real quick to these harmonies because these are the most obvious double to deal with. Last slide, a half mile away. All right, so they're pretty tight. They sound good, but the tighter these are, especially, it's the little things. It's the hard vowels and consonants. It's the T's. It's the S's. It's those types of things. Little differences there. If you have two here and then you have one in the lead and one in the octave, now all of a sudden you have whenever it comes to those ends, and you'd be surprised how much of a difference it can make just lining up even those parts of songs. So I start with the vocal line. And it's a super easy process. Vocal line ultra. And capture. This is going to be my main reference. Oh, why is it? Oh, it's there. I can see it now. And then you just select down here, capture. Now, I'm not going to because I don't actually care, but normally I would duplicate the playlist before doing this, but I don't need to save this for any reason. Last slide, half mile away. Here's a difference. Last slide, a half mile away. And then here's the last slide, a half mile away. It's very subtle because his stuff was good.
Can you make the Pro Tools just a little louder?
Yes, I sure can. Let me just do it on my master. It'll be fine. You guys will love that. Last slide, a half mile away. That's the fixed. Oops. Last slide, a half mile away. It's matching it in both, in this situation, pitch and timing. So this is going to save me from doing a lot of melodyning later to match them up because it's doing it with pitch and time, and it's making it, now I don't make it like super tight because you could do this perfect. I also sometimes do a formant shift, sometimes I don't, but it's just changing it ever so slightly, but it's locking it in both timing and pitch, so it's going to be pretty perfect. So I would do that across any matching vocals. If it is like a situation like this where there's a lead doing the same thing or the doubles, I'll take a look because sometimes people intentionally leave doubles or harmonies longer or shorter or whatever. You don't want to like overmatch things and ruin what somebody had as a vibe. But at the same time, it's cool to just like, you know, lock in all those little things, those T's, those S's, the pitch and everything like that. Last slide, half mile away, if you're ready for it. So I'll just do it real quick to this. You can usually get away with vocal lining big sections now. Back whenever I started, it was not like that. Vocal line was just in its infancy and it was not very good. But it would like stretch out words sometimes that didn't make any sense, or it wouldn't understand what was happening, so it would just destroy the recording. It was kind of funny. I enjoyed it. You had to always really pay attention. Now you can kind of just assume it. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly it on a late night, a red eye Cool. Sounds great. Again, all of this is really good. It's easy to do whenever it's good. It's hard to do whenever it's bad, but I made a good living helping really bad artists be good. So now making really like good artists be great, is a lot easier. But so yeah, so now I have these harmonies. I would also go ahead at this point and they sound good enough. I know I can get away with it. I'm just going to use some autotune. Um, Now, here's an important thing that I was thinking about the other day because, first of all, one thing that I notice with Autotune that people do all the time, and any pitch correction software, right? Everybody does this. You get your Autotune and you set the settings on one of them, or your Melodyne, or you're not your Melodyne, but your Waves tune or whatever. You set your settings on it, right? And then what do? You drag it to all the other tracks. You already set the settings, right? Well, here's the thing about vocals, right? It's like when things get too perfect, they don't sound as good as whenever they're slightly not the same, right? So what I do with autotune a lot of times, like in this situation, this track's in G. I'm gonna set this as alto, in major. Now, a lot of times I don't also do this. This is just something I'm doing to save time. But most of the time I will manually enter the keys because sometimes you'll find a single note that the slide of it is really nice or whatever, and I like to be able to quickly remove those rather than having the key set and not being able to change things without going into, more work and shit. So I set this, right? And I will still do what I said not to do, which is drag it to all the tracks. But then I'm going to open these up and I'm going to change the retune speeds just slightly. It can be anything. Like maybe you do one a little bit lower, one a little bit higher. It doesn't really matter. The point is that you want them to be set differently. When they're set the same, they start doing that really I'm hearing auto tune thing that everybody hates. When they're hearing a good singer and the good singer they can hear like an auto tune thing, they're like, it does that because it's too perfect and your ear hears that and it's like, I don't like this. It's not right. This is manufactured and I don't like it. Now, of course, if that's what you're looking for, then yeah, set them all to the same thing. But if you want it to still feel natural and real, you all set them to a different, amount. And if you try this, here's how this, you'll hear, I do this all the time by accident, which is really funny. So I'm gonna solo these up. I'll put them back in the middle so we can hear them. Slide, last slide, a half mile away. Now, this is the extreme example of this or whatever, but you're essentially creating, listen to the difference between how this sounds when they're both exactly the same. Last slide, a half mile away. Versus this sound where one is drastically different. Last slide, a half mile away. You can hear a chorusing effect more. It does more of like this, the pitch is the same but slightly different. Now think about that in terms of panning. It feels so much less like it's a auto-tune effect thing than it is just a good vocal. So that's one of my little tricks that I like to do is always set my auto-tunes to different values so that they create that effect and it always seems to work, or at least people seem to like it anyway. All right, so I got the backgrounds tune. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this on to this octave and this here. And again, like I said, I'll set some of them different. I don't like them all tuning to the exact same amount at the same time. I do sometimes bust out on the humanize, the vibrato. This isn't one of those vocals that needs you to really dig into this thing. I went like 12 years of my career without ever touching either of these buttons, so I'm pretty sure it's not necessary. But by all means, dig into it. If there is an issue, if you're hearing something that's bothering you, you can try and use those things to solve that problem. But I don't reflexively reach for people or reach for buttons on things without actually a problem. Okay, so lead, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to keep the lead's tune lower than everything. Like the lead to me is especially for this. This is something where we don't want it to feel like it's unnatural. We want it to feel like he's a great singer in these parts. We want sides to sound like she's a great singer and not like she needs to be manufactured to be great. So you don't douse these things in autotune. You keep it nice and light. So, and you usually, in this case, and this is what I will do, is try and get that autotune or that melodyne right starting off the bat. So I'm just going to tune this real quick in Melodyne. I don't think actually, I'll listen to it first. I don't think it really needs much. You can bet 'em at the last slide, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly it on a late night, a red eye. If you're ready for it, say you're ready for me. Yeah, so I'm not going to Melodyne this, but I would Melodyne this. Just ever so slightly. There's a few things that I could touch up on, but I'm going to save the Melodyne for the lead in the verse. But assume that I would touch that just a tiny bit in the same way that I'm going to touch it on the verse when we get there. All right, so actually, we'll go there right now. So I'm going to really quick just throw on Melodyne. And if you guys aren't using this ARA Melodyne, it's just so nice in Pro Tools. It's so good. Finally, they got a window so that I don't have to have it in the bottom of my screen, which made me really angry. All right, so Melodyne. I'm going to do this and say what I'm going to do, but I'm also going to not do it because I'm trying to save time. So whenever I do Melodyne, all right, I am looking to make vocals usually. If I'm digging into Melodyne, I'm looking to make the vocals as real sounding, but as good sounding as possible. So the first step that I do with Melodyne is I pop through and I chop off anything. So if you are not familiar with Melodyne, Melodyne it's an amazing vocal tuning program that I use almost exclusively when it comes to hand editing because of how clean and transparent it can be if you do it right. But the way to do it is each one of these blobs that you see, those blobs are actually the average of the note. So if I were to right now go here and click on this, it lowered this down because that's the average of the note. Now, if anybody is into math in here, we know that averages change based upon the set of numbers that are inside of it. So if you have big numbers and little numbers, and you have a bunch of middle numbers, you know, you're getting influence from these big numbers and those little numbers. This is the same way this works. If you have a note like this where it starts sharp, goes back down right on the note, and then goes sharp again, and then you try and fix that, it's going to try and center the average of that note. Oops. But if you, can I get it? Oh, okay. If you separate those parts here and here, your tune for that part is going to be much cleaner. You're just bringing back the high and the high parts that are there. You're setting a better note in that situation. Now, I'm just using that as an example. Usually it's more egregious than this tiny little, that you have to fix. But the important part is that you go through and you recognize anytime the line isn't on the note, that's a place that can probably be improved for getting a good reading of what the note's doing. So I will go through and find any sharp like things and I'll take those off because they mess up the average of that note and doesn't give me a good representation of what's going on. Now the line itself is the actual note, which can be helpful for solving some things like why this note still sounds bad after I've already put these things in. But what I'm doing right now, I'm not changing anything. I'm just giving it better access to reading these notes than it had before, because it's considering that all one note. But instead, now I can hit this and put this note right in the middle. Just makes a whole difference. I'm talking and doing things instead of just showing what I actually do. So I go through and I edit all these parts to make them the best reading I can get. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning and pretend I did it for the whole thing, which I also sometimes do, but I'm teaching the right ways to do things. You're the one from my dreams. So a lot of times I don't usually touch the in and out of a word. I usually look for the center of it because that's what we hear and focus on as like listeners. We're listening for that pitch center to hit, and that's when we're like, yes, in tune. So it's usually not the slides ins and outs that ever make us hate them. And so I usually leave them alone unless they're egregious and I need to, fix them for that reason.
The one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog tonight.
So it's like all of this is really great. Her vocals are really good. There's a difference between like it's just what we expect now for the most part is to have like an ultra perfect vocal. So I'm going to go through and find any time that it makes me feel like I could improve that note a little bit. And I do. So like I heard this specifically, it's like just a little bit sharp and it's like it's nice. I'll do a little comparison shop on it. All right, so
I don't need a kiss, a frog.
and then here's before.
I don't need a kiss, a I don't need a kiss.
So I'm gonna bring it down just a hair.
I don't need a kiss, a frog.
And you can hear it, especially with music going.
I don't need a kiss, a frog.
And the same thing, just going through and finding little things where I can improve. I don't, for somebody this good, this isn't a lot of work. This is like you touch a few spots.
A kind of love was written by poets.
Yeah, get that.
By poets. Was written by poets.
But that goes down a little flat.
Love was written by.
Maybe here.
Written by poets. The kind of was written by poets.
Just little subtle changes. That end makes such a huge difference there.
Was written by poets.
Versus.
Love was written by poets.
It just makes everything around it sound a little bit cleaner because it's on. So anyway, I'll do this. I'll touch on it very lightly in the right cases because also you don't want to be insulting to people, like even if they're on your live stream watching you tune their vocals, So, very light touches on stuff. I'll listen. I can, at this point, see what it is that I'm looking for 90% of the time and identify stuff through like problem areas, just knowing like, oh, that's probably a little rough right there. And I'll fix those spots and then I'll just double check them.
My own. My own. My own. Loneliness.
Probably bring it.
Loneliness was eating me slowly. And all nights on my own. Loneliness was eating me slowly.
All right, so imagine I did that on the whole song. I could usually probably finish like something like this. This is like a 15-minute job or something to do all the vocals in it. It's pretty clean for the most part. So let me see. Did I talk about did that? So yeah, so once I have everything cool, I mean, I don't think her lead really needs auto-tune at all, but I might put one on and just feel like nice, like 30s, something like that. Change. A lot of people don't touch this. I don't know why people don't touch it. Detects better whenever you put the type of vocal in. It just makes sense. A lot of people don't do that. That's the one thing that's like I actually care about. The only setting I set is like what type of vocal it is, and it's so much better whenever you do that. All right, so now EQ and compression. So we've now made our vocals to a point where we're pretty satisfied with them. Imagine that I did it across everything, really got into the whole situation. Now we're going to put that vocal in a space in the song. So once it's good, because it's surprising how much like tuning and fixing a vocal makes you like the way something sounds and sits in the track. Sometimes people they hear a bad note and they're like, the vocal's too loud. And it's because they're hearing that bad note too loud. So I love to get people into a space before we even get to where the vocal sits, that they're happy with the vocal. Because if you don't do that, you'll end up, maybe they sing a part really good and they're like, oh, I want to hear that even more or whatever. Just the whole song consistent. It makes it so much easier to mix. All right, so I've got a few different things. Like I said, I got the lead, I got this octave, I got some doubles, and I got some harmonies. I'm going to mute everything uh, all the leads. I don't even want to talk about the leads right now. I'm going to sit all the rest of this stuff in the track, starting with whatever. I'm going to do the doubles and the harmonies first, but whatever I usually do it in like the lead has to go last because that's what has to sit in all this stuff, right? So I always save the lead for last, but everything else is kind of like up in importance from there. So the next most important thing is the thing I'll probably put in the track next, provided it's like doubles or whatever, you know? And then after that, then I start looking into like parts that are less important. Like that octave, that's going to be oh, that's my garbage. That octave is going to be the like the feel but not heard thing, you know? So that's like it's probably like the least important in all of these things. Like you're definitely going to hear harmonies and feel them. The doubles you'll definitely kind of be tucked under a little bit, but the lead will be there, and then that octave is just going to be supporting that. So you're almost never going to hear it, especially with the low end of the track kind of sitting in the exact same space. So I'm going to start with the doubles. I'm gonna turn them up drastically. Oh yeah, that was the other thing too. The only thing I did do for all of side stuff was I clip gained everything. I don't care. I'll clip gain stuff as long as it's the right thing to do. One thing that's important about getting like tones, like you could just see before this, I clip gained these both 13.5 dB, right? So, oh, my shit's not so listed. Even at minus or plus 13, you can see how low these vocals are. You know, I'm using Pro Tools Classic metering just so you know. Oh, that's not even going to the thing, but let me put that into doubles. Organization. Anyway, so you have this vocal and it's going, look at it's hitting so incredibly low. That's not gonna hit any of the compression, any of the things that you want, you know, and it's important to hit plugins, even though there's like unlimited fucking headroom and all the bullshit everybody talks about on the internet and shit. You still have to hit the plugins at the right optimal level for the plugins. If you're not hitting the plugins at the right level, you're just you're not getting the plugin to function at its best performance. So especially with like compressors and stuff like that, you know, people end up turning up the output of their compressor so much and doing more shit when they should be focused on the input of the compressor and making sure that they're getting the right amount there. All right, so I have a Stream Deck. I don't know if any. Oh, I don't even know if I can show it. I have a Stream Deck. I like my Stream Deck. I use it for a lot of stuff. It saves me a lot of time. For example, if I'm mixing backgrounds, I can just select my background channel and it loads in all of my favorite background channel stuff. I don't need that, but the rest of it is all good. So in that, that being said, it's also very limited. I don't use a lot of stuff. I'm a plugin minimalist because I feel like if you need more than like 3 or 4 plugins, you're probably doing something wrong in the tracking process, and the tracking process is the important part. So why not invest in people doing better jobs on the tracking side? But that's a whole rant for another day. That being said, these are really good sounding vocals, so I know I'm not going to need to do much. I know this is why this is a preset for me. Like I don't do a lot of preset stuff. I only do it whenever it's stuff that I'm 100% going to do every single time. For example, take out all the low end from the backgrounds because you don't need them. It's just extra information. People take out low end from vocals all the time anyway. It's not a big deal. I'm also going to cut out that same spot that we were talking about before from the track because I'm giving the lead vocal that space. I know right away that lead vocal is going to sit in that area-ish, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. Now, some people, especially with like the FabFilter Pro Q3s, they get real, you know, like I'm going to see that vocal and compare it to this one and do the side chain. You don't have to do all that, I don't think. I think just get roughly in the area and make a nice cut. It's only like 3 dB. I'm also taking off a little bit of the top end. That makes perfect sense to me. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to compress a little bit. I'm not going to compress without hearing it because that would be a weird thing to do. What is going on now? Oh, did I? Something from my preset messed me up. Why am I not? Oh, the input change. Stupid thing. I forgot that I have to set my preset. It's a whole thing. Sorry, I'm stupid, is what it is. Anyway, hack and a fraud. Pro Q3. I'm going to listen to this compression. I'm going to take this de-esser off for a minute. See what I'm saying? We're not even compressing on this. I want this vocal to compress, but I'm even at plus 24 dB. And can you imagine how much I would be putting up the input of this compressor to get this vocal to compress whenever it was that low, to start off with? Things work better in their optimal range.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it.
Now, because it's obviously so loud, I'm going to turn the output of that compressor down.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. When you're ready. I'm at the last light, a half mile away.
Now, as you can see, I am not compressing a lot, 3 to 5 dB, something like that, like depending on how far, whenever he hits that way.
Half mile away.
You can see it hitting like 3, 4 dB, but for the rest of it, I'm not looking to squash this vocal. Like, compression is a way of bringing things forward in the mix, and if you smash this, that means you want it to be forward in the mix. So typically I don't do that. Also, you'll notice this is a good reason, again, auxes. I'm doing all of this stuff once instead of doing it on this vocal and then copying over to this vocal and all. It's just saving time. So auxes, time saver, do that. They're great.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red eye.
Now, something that I do a lot with vocals and with everything with compression, I time that release more towards the song than what the object is. Like, I'm trying to match the release of this vocal to the way that the song feels, because it makes you feel a little bit more of like the motion of the song and all that. I don't know. It's like philosophy stuff, but whatever. After that, I'm going to throw on a Pro DS.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away.
Now, these are doubles, so I'm going to DS as much really as I want, because I don't need any of the S's from the doubles. There's already going to be enough S's in the lead vocal. Don't DS don't get finicky on the de-essing of the backgrounds. Just take it all out. You don't need it.
I'm at the last light, a half. I'm at the last light, a half mile.
Yeah, great. All the way out. I might even do a little bit more. After that, this is where I get into the things vary depending on what I'm doing, which is in this vocal, I think it sounds great. I think it could use some like real like kind of texture to it, but I would do something simple like a tape machine or something like that, just like the ATR 102 is cool. I use a lot of UAD stuff, even though I'm not a big fan of their end user license agreement.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red eye. If you're ready for it, say you're ready for me. You know it's fun. I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night.
All right, and then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a limiter on here. Now, this is all dependent on whatever the song is and all that stuff, because, do things appropriately. But here, real quick, I'm going to hit you with this little bit of limiting on the very end.
I'm at the last light.
Not even hitting it, it doesn't even matter. It's arbitrary at this point, but I'll leave it there anyways. But if it was in fact hitting hard, I would want to blend it down a little bit so that you're not getting as much as the transients in the backgrounds and all that. I am going to, for the sake of time, copy all of this concept to the backgrounds with some slight changes, and I'll show them to you in a second. And backgrounds, I'm doing this like the hard way. Bam, bam, and bam. Listen to them real quick.
I'm at the last
Okay, so I got that. Next, I'm going to go here. The big change I'm going to make, this cut that I made in the doubles, I'm going to place that in the mid on this one. I want them to still have their character. Again, you're doing different things on each thing to give each thing a texture that makes it special, that makes it stick out, and that's how. So, backgrounds, I'm going to take this just out of the mids and let most of this stay in the sides, except for the low end. I'm going to take the low end out in stereo still. All right, and that is going to give me a space for these to sit sonically that is slightly different than the doubles, and they are panned out, so they're filling up a different space that's existing. Everything gets its own special space. All right, I realize I'm like pushing 45 minutes already. I could talk longer. I don't know. Should I talk less or?
I just want to make sure we have time for the
Questions. I have as much time as this takes, but I can speed up a little bit and jump through some stuff here.
anybody hearing
They'll probably I'll probably answer a lot of follow-up questions from all this stuff anyway. So,
Are you guys hearing it? Did you click the stereo when you shared stereo sound?
I think so. Did it not sound in stereo?
Are you guys hearing it in stereo?
Here, let me play something. This should be.
I'm at the last light, a half mile. I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it.
It sounds stereo.
Sound stereo? We're good? All right. I mean, I can do a definitive test here. Wait, here's left.
Yeah.
Last light, a half mile away.
Solid?
Someone, are you guys hearing? Okay, wait. So can you stop share for a second, and then when you reshare, just do that drop down. I'll stop.
Yep. Oh, how do I get to, yeah, stop my share. I don't know how to get back to that menu every time. Okay, share,
There's a
share
drop-
sound.
You see that little drop down that says stereo?
Yep. Yep, got it. I thought that was on, but now we're learning again. All right.
The last light,
Bam.
last light, a
Yeah.
half mile away.
Cool. All right. So, apologies. Well, good thing you haven't really needed any stereo until this exact moment, which is also a learning lesson for everybody. I don't think about stereo field. I don't need to think about stereo field. Like this is all EQ. I mean, the stereo field is just part of this whole process. It's like you know, I've never listened to a mix and been like, oh my God, it's so wide. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. That's not a metric that people sit in their cars going like, man, I'm really hearing the left side sitting in this driver's seat right now. You know, who cares about any of that? What it is about fitting all these things inside of a sound, regardless of what stereo field it lives in. So anyway, not super important, but as I just did, I explained, no, we took this mono out, we got it. Now I'm going to, I've arranged all these things sonically, and I've arranged them all with a front to back of compression, but I also want to hit with some reverbs real quick because that will help us out. And we'll get to the
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready,
Again, keep in mind we are not listening to the lead at all still. This is just all the backgrounds. I'm also going to, for the sake of things, copy everything over to this octave and just pretend that I went through and paid attention to every single minute detail of that. All right, here we go.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night. Already.
Now, I'm just noticing right away, this one specifically is a little bit hotter than the others.
When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night. Say you're ready for me. I'm at the last light.
All right, cool. So now I'm going to throw on some reverbs. I always name my buses because I am not a satanic worshiper of the devil arts. So I'm big on Valhalla. I'm big on Pro L, or not Pro R from FabFilter. I'm big on what else do I use? Capital Chambers sometimes. I like making my own reverbs out of my live room. I like doing all sorts of, I actually have, oh, I definitely can't show you this, but I have a Vermona spring reverb in my thing here. It's like I don't have a lot of things that I buy, but like that was one that I was like, oh yeah, I need a Vermona spring reverb. I love these things. So I do, I like natural stuff all the time, but that's what I love about FabFilter. I actually save some of my like preset stuff. This is like a Bright Hall. That's about a good time for it. And I'm just going to sit it back in the track a little bit.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night or red eye. If you're ready for it, say you're ready for me.
Yeah, sounds pretty good. I'll do the same thing with the backgrounds. Normally, I would probably do a slightly different reverb. Same thing, same concept as before. Saving time right now, but sometimes I will just throw the same reverb on. It just depends whether I want them to gel all the same or have just a little bit more separation. Little things like reverbs, huge deals. All right, we're gonna move on to the lead. I conveniently also have a button for that. And it looks remarkably similar to the other one, but it has all these plugins that don't exist right now, or all these sends. I'm not working out of a full template. Now you'll see, I don't know why this also is not correct either. I'm going to delete these. I am going to now put this vocal in, and I'm going to take all this stuff off because it's stupid to leave it all active because I have no idea what this sounds like yet.
I'm at the
I gotta change this back to leads. Is it this one? Yeah.
You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a
Okay, so I'm hearing all the things that are like conflicting with each other. This has got some around here.
You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it.
If the fundamentals down there, you know what he's singing, I'm trying to get rid of that in the doubles and let the rest of their, harmonics basically be the thing that are apparent. If so, you can see right there, that's literally where that note was at
You
in the
can bet
doubles.
I'm at the last light,
Right in this
a half
is the
mile
fundamental.
away. If you're
I'm
ready.
pulling that out of all the doubles because those rub, like no matter how perfect they are, they still kind of rub together and they create too much of that low mid type of thing. So I will often cut that out of the doubles so that it can stay in the lead. All right, and bam, I do that.
You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it.
Cool, so I feel pretty good about that. I actually do want to give this a bit of top.
You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night.
I'm a broad sweep type of guy. This isn't just because I'm trying to move fast. This is literally how I operate. I don't bass, mid, treble. Don't be like tweaking on stuff. Those people that put like 70 EQ points on an EQ, like almost 1,000% of the time, whenever I get one of those, I just delete it, and they're like, "How did you make my vocal sound so big and full?" It's like I stopped chopping everything cool out of it. It's the thing that happens. I don't know. Anyway, so 1176. Gonna do some compression.
I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it.
See, I'm like,
When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night. I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. When you're ready, I could fly in on a late night. A red
now, whenever I'm compressing, a lot of times I'm trying to, for this, I'm just trying to tame the hardest of transients or whatever, but I'm also trying to set the output level so that, first of all, it's about where it was before, but also I do tend to not, like people always try and set their output level a little bit louder than where it was, and because it sounds better, right? But if you turn that back down, even just for a second, you'll end up making decisions that are better EQ and space wise because you're not trying to just make it louder or make it as loud as the whole track should be for it at the end, right? So next, Pro DS. I'm not going to do this one as serious. Cool. So after that, I'm going to EQ P1A a little bit for his vocal because this is a cool thing. This is just a little bit of like color for me. I do a little bit of that EQ like trick. It basically gives like a low boost whenever you do this, like turn the bandwidth up a little bit, turn the attenuation up on the 60 and boost the 60 here and then attenuate here. It does like this boost EQ thing. You can look it up. It's a whole thing. Nobody cares though, but here I'll add maybe a hair of 5K just on some like sparkle-ish shit. And then the next thing I'm going to do is typically I would maybe ATR 102. You got a good point there, ATR. But I actually think this one is like a Neve sparkle thing at the top. You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away, if you're ready for it. Now, I gave myself room to EQ a little bit of brilliance on top of that by not turning that compressor up 3 steps ago too loud, because now everything would be too loud. But instead I gave myself some room to boost that pretty shit, that pretty saturation and tone into the track rather than doing that and then turning it down and turning the vocal up and turning the vocal down, like all that stuff. I'm just creating space the whole time. Last thing I'll do, I will do a limiter on this probably. You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red eye. If you're ready for it. To me, it's like almost just a volume control too, because I can always turn this output back up, this out ceiling, whenever I'm doing this. So if later, like the vocalist is like, "Yo, I just want like 2 dB," I don't ever really touch this volume fader on these tracks. Like everything should be able to happen in here to me for the most part. I have so many different level controls, and that's how you keep your gain staging from getting stupid, is you always keep one thing steady, which is me, the output of my auxes. Okay, moving on real quick. I'm just going to throw some quick reverb on here. Let's just make new lead verb. Bam. Valhalla. This is more of like a short verb, but I do like maybe a random space. These things are all arbitrary to me. It's just like they sound away or they don't, so I just like do them. You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red eye. If you're ready for it, say you're ready for me. You know it's fine, can make it in a while. Tell me you've been waiting for it. When you're ready, let me hear on the west side, whatever time. Just say you're ready for it when you're. So next thing I would do, just listening to that, I would like a little bit of some what am I doing here? AMS. This is one of my favorite things. This AMS, if you don't know, this is like what Prince used. He loved it on drums. He loved it on his vocal. It's just a cool sound. It's very subtle most of the time. It just kind of puts you a little bit, it just gives some space around the vocal, so I'll play this without it. You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red. You can bet I'm at the last light, a half mile away. If you're ready for it. Just subtle, sounds really nice. I would also probably start doing some delays. I'm a big Echo Boy person. Let's just pretend that I'm like putting lots of thought and care into all these things, because, you know, I could talk all day. And I was worried about not having enough material to talk about, but instead I'm like nonstop. Here's some more stuff. People, I don't know, the like the places where I think people should tweak are never the places I think people should tweak. They tweak forever on like an EQ, and then they just set a preset for a delay. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like the delays and that type of stuff, that's where I feel like you really make a track come alive by having a bunch of different like effects and reverbs and stuff, and subtly using them is really like the key to it. It is like you don't just like have a whole bunch of stuff and then it goes everywhere. It's like you use these little tiny pieces here and there, and you only use them like once or twice the whole song. But this is like my every lead kind of feel. Like I would just leave this on the whole time. So I'm gonna do like a quarter note, and it's gonna be really quiet, and I'm gonna do like, I don't know, maybe a space echo to start with, turn the saturation up a little bit.
Last light half mile.
Now, this is like one of the only times I do solo things because I need to hear what the delay actually sounds like before I bury it in the track. Like, I don't do, it's like weird how people sometimes will arbitrarily just like turn it down a bunch and then not actually
Last
listen.
light half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, last light half mile away. If you're ready for it.
Now, I like the tone of it. I'm going to turn up the feedback just a hair. I'm going to cut out a little bit more of that, and that's where I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to listen to it in the track now.
Last light half mile away. If you're ready for it, when you're ready, I could fly in on a late night, a red eye. If you're ready for it.
Now, I love to just like, it just depends on how effects heavy they like their vocal and everything, but I love to just leave it like that. That's like a really nice, like subtle, it's not buried in effects, but you can hear that there's stuff there, but it's not just like slamming with effects. So from there, I'll move on to sides vocal down here. I'm going to, for the sake of time, pretend that it is very similar. Actually, I'll just do it this way. And I will set lead, sides, do the same thing, address it like, you know, its own thing. Oh, I'll have to definitely talk about that real quick, but that's what I'll do for this. I'll do this one. Okay, so EQ, I'm gonna listen.
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it. Our kind of love was written by poets, the kind of love that stays evergreen. All those nights on my own, loneliness was eating me slowly. You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it.
Somewhat fast attack, somewhat fast release. I'll do the DS again. Same thing, I
You're
don't,
the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it.
I would go for a Neve for her on her vocal. She's got like a really nice like mid-rangey kind of thing going there with her vocals. So
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it. Our kind of love was written by poets, the kind of love that stays evergreen.
just for her voice, I would definitely put some like saturation texture on it.
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it.
All right, so now I am going to, for the sake of time, do a lead vocal, same as what I did for the male vocal in here. We're just gonna use that.
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it.
I'm gonna keep that really low because I'm gonna do a new verb. I'll use the Pro R for this. And Pro R, bam. I like to also tweak on these a little bit. It's like a medium kind of thing I want, and then I'll just find like I want a medium haul, cool it with.
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it. Our kind of love was written by poets, the kind of love
Cool. So I'm going to do something that I normally wouldn't do, but I'm going to make a delay throw on here just so we can talk about it. Because I think delay throws are the type of thing that can be really handy um, to make a track feel alive. But if you leave it on the whole time, they get very like, overdone. I'll do like one or two delay throws per song, but usually not more than that. I'm gonna use Echo Boy for it for. I don't know why I said that. Also, I don't know what I was just doing. That's not what I'm doing. I would sometimes put it on a track, but not in this case. I'm gonna use Echo Boy throw. Cool. I'll do Echo Boy. I look for the not expected places to do it. Like if this was like a normal person,
My dreams.
they would do it on dreams. It's like the end of the sentence, then you fill up. I like to sometimes do delay throws in places that are not as expected. It's like, you know,
You're the one from my dreams.
like maybe on one, you have to hear it and see how it sounds because obviously it could be absolutely ridiculous. And I maybe do a ping pong for this one. I'll turn it up, do like cheap tape with saturation, and then I'll do like a little. I would automate this on my. I have a what is it called? A Fader port 8 or whatever. But I'm not going to automate it on that this time because that's work. Mute. Just gonna do that, and then let's say
The one for
take it off on that. I'm gonna turn it up too much to start.
you're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss or fall. You're the one from my dreams.
It's like does this in unexpected subtle like throw in a place that's not where you would expect it to be. Everybody does the very obvious dreams at the end. It's like you do it in the middle somewhere and it kind of just like gives this nice little flow to the rest of the words. Anyway, I would do that like 5 or 6 times across this track maybe if it was like a rap track, and then maybe like 3 or 4 times max if it was a track like this. All right, what else did I have on here? Oh man, so many things. I got about halfway through this. This is amazing. All right, we'll really quickly talk about that. Now and only now is when I start talking about effects, modulation, like alter boy, stuff like that. Like have everything in a really good place before you even think about going to doing like creative things, and then use those creative things to solve the problems. That's what I normally do is I listen and I go, oh, this part feels a little awkward. Okay, now I got all these creative tools that I know exist to jump in on. All right. So yeah, Soothe. Oh my God, cool. Let's talk about Soothe. Everybody's overusing it. You don't need it. It's cool, but we literally had a good solid 60 years of recording without Soothe. Like, chill out. Stop putting it on every track. It's not that great of a plugin. It does do a specific thing very cool, but like I feel like this is a philosophy thing, but the reason people think like I also work with people who record in their bedroom and everything. I know a lot of you record in not real studio spaces. All right. Everybody is recording in not studio spaces. You don't need that stuff to make it sound like it was recorded in a studio space. That's like the mentality is we got to fix this over here because we're not recording nobody's recording like that anymore. Everybody records in their bedrooms and in their houses. And my friend Johan literally uses a USB mic and he like does like Metro Boomin songs and stuff. Like everybody is kind of doing that. You don't need to fix it with that. Wait for it to be an actual problem and then use stuff like that. All the extra stuff, everything that I gave you, this is why I started here and stayed here the most times, because this already is enough to make a good vocal mix. Like this, I like Sides has a real studio and everything and real equipment, but make no mistake, like even if this was the worst recorded vocal, like this is enough already to get a really good sounding track just from here. If you're focusing on EQ, focusing on compression, focusing on like the basics. It's literally the basics: panning, EQ, compression, and choose when and where to use those things and how to just don't just put them on out of habit, put them on as a I'm solving this problem. This is what I want to do, right? Um, that's all that delays. I did that mess. Okay, real quick, master bus compression, right? As you'll notice, I have not yet touched the master bus at all. Once I have all of my effects, once I get to the point of where I'm starting to do delay throws and stuff, you got to get your master bus compression on. You got to get a limiter on there, because at this point, that big difference that mastering makes, that's going to be the thing that they're suddenly hearing way louder whenever you do send a track off to mastering. If you're doing these subtle delays, but then you haven't even put a limiter on, which, that's my fault. But if you're doing all these subtle delays and you haven't even put a limiter on yet, you're not actually setting a level for those things, because the limiting is going to make a huge difference on how loud those things are perceived in the track. They're the quiet things, it's like going to bring them way up. So once you start getting to setting levels, after setting levels, and once you start getting to setting effects and putting like delays and reverbs on, that's when you need to get it over to the master bus. And I do it as simple as just throwing on a Pro L2, bam, and just getting the overall. I set the output to -2 or 0.2 or whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about, I think, maybe not. So I set it to about 0.2, and then I crank it up until it is about, somewhere around like 10 to 12 LUFS is like a good guessing point for the most part.
You can bet 'em at the last light, a half mile away, if you're ready for
Now, obviously, this track is super quiet. All the tracks, this isn't in the right place. I need to turn this up, get some boost over here. It's actually, I should maybe do this first and then. Cranking now, baby.
You can bet 'em at the last light, a half mile away.
My vocal's not going to the same. No, looks right. Anyway, you can tell my gain staging is a little off. I did not actually look at how low all of this stuff was recorded before I got this far. Now I'm going to have to go back and actually do all the gain staging. But that's the point, is get the limiter on there, get it set so it's going to like plus 12-ish or minus 12. I don't know why I said plus. Anyways, minus 12. And then you at least have a good measurement for where you're going to be at. And that is enough. And I can definitely take questions now, because it's probably better to just answer those.
Okay, perfect. So will you type your questions in the chat, and then I'm going to read them off to Greasy so he can answer them. And if you asked a question earlier that wasn't actually answered throughout the presentation, just please retype it in so he can answer it. Okay, so how would you EQ a voice recorded very close to the mic with a lot of low mids?
A lot of low mids. I mean, definitely. So here's the thing: is like if they recorded very close to the mic and there's a lot of low mids, then like I'm assuming that that's something that they chose to accentuate a little bit. It's like if they're doing now, if this is completely, like opposite of what it seems like their music is supposed to be doing, then yeah, okay, then I'd probably just cut out everything below like 400, just chop it off, high pass it, not even worry about it. Again, I'm a broad strokes person. If it's not supposed to be there, it's gone. I'll just chop it out. I'll find something else to fill that space.
Okay, we're not going to get into the DAW war phenomenon now. So any DAW is fine. I think you would agree, Greasy, like whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think whatever you're good at using and whatever you like using, that's the best thing to use, because that's what you're going to spend the time doing the right stuff in. And like when I mix in Ableton or Logic, I'm not as fluent as I am in Pro Tools. So I do things easier with less work, because I don't want to have to dig into complicated things that I don't know how to do right away. So it's just be comfortable. Whatever you're comfortable in, you're going to do the best work in.
All the plugins that you use today, I didn't see you use like one stock plugin, if I was correct. Maybe one you used, but so you can use any of those plugins that he talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certain things I could use I've mixed just for the fun of it with just stock stuff. I only use the stuff that I use because, again, I'm familiar with it and it has certain functionality. Like this Pro Q3 has the ability to load many different EQ points and also do mid-side. Pro Tools doesn't have a stock. In fact, there is not really even Pro Tools stock plugins. There's like a handful of things that come, but it's not like Logic where you get a ton of really good stuff that you can use. So Pro Tools, it's kind of like necessary to do that, but it's also Pro Tools. It's literally like I'm making money using this, so it's fine to spend the money on it because if I ever pay taxes, then I'll get that money back or not have to pay it.
You guys don't need to have like 500 different types of EQ. Like you can just pick one.
What you're seeing here is 90% of what I use. Like I use Pro Q3, 1176s, LA2As, a de-esser, pretty much the same like 8 reverbs, and then that's it. I could absolutely function with just like three of these plugins and mix a whole song, no problem. It's just I happen to have a lot more. I mean, you could look at my plugin menu. I have just hundreds of plugins. I don't even know anymore how many I had. I did a test one time to see, but it's like in the thousands. I have so many plugins. It's ridiculous. These are like all the different companies and stuff, especially now because people always want me to try out plugins. And then I'm like, which one is going to screw my computer up long term? Thanks.
Like that, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
how often are you bussing your vocals and do you put effects on vocal bus?
I do not put effects on vocal buses often, but I look at everything in like what is the smartest way to do this? If it is in fact to put it on the bus, I just put it on the bus. Also, there's a whole thing about difference between, using a reverb on a send and using a reverb on the bus itself, because anything that you do on a send, that's additive, right? It's like that is adding all that to what is already there. When you do a mix, that's cumulative. Both of those are adding together in that one spot. So it's like if you're doing 70%, the volumes still stay the same. But if you were doing a send and you did +3 or +4, you would be getting more volume than you would be getting if you had just done the mix. So just a thought process on how I do things.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna skip some of the questions that he answered, but somebody asked, how would you work with vocals that have already been processed, which you did kind of answer in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it as long as it's not inherently bad. If it is, communication is the number one key. You get to get on the phone with the client and be like, hey, I noticed you sent me all this stuff. Did you like that reverb and delay? Because I can't do anything with it if you don't, and just explaining it to them. Because a lot of times people don't even know. And they're just like, yeah, I didn't know that I couldn't do that. I thought you had a de-reverb or something.
Okay. Okay. And so do you use linear phase in the EQ and oversampling on the de-esser? Also,
Almost,
is there
almost.
is there a specific reason to use the black 1176?
Yeah, great questions. Almost never do I use linear. I don't change settings like a lot of these settings. I know, and we can all admit it. None of us are listening and hearing that. We're not hearing that. Like these subtle differences, maybe they're happening every now and then, but no one else is hearing that. It's like you being real banal about something that you care about a lot. Those little things, and if you are hearing the differences, you're moving it's an EQ. You're accommodating for those differences already. If the linear phase is doing like a 2 dB difference in the low end or something like that, then that's what you're listening for. You're listening for how much is already there. So you just keep EQing. Like EQs have always made phase shifts as long as they've existed. Since we got parametric, since the Lord George Massenburg gave us parametric equalization, that's how EQs work. They do phase shifts. So it's like we've always been using EQs with phase shifts. So I'm getting to that. 1176. I just particularly like the input and output gain structure of the LN. It's if you look at like the different versions, they basically all have different input and output gain structures, and I like the input gain structure of the LN. It just is something I'm more comfortable with, and etc. So that's why I use the blackface.
Okay, stepping back to tracking vocals, what are your go-tos for plugins to retain latency and keep a vibe for the artist monitoring?
Great question. I'm going to actually give you a great example of that because I do, in fact, on this Stream Deck, I have both mixing and then also tracking. And both of them have, if I'm hitting the tracking button, a tracking preset that, here, I'll show it to you in this, in here, recall track preset, mixing, GW, lead vox, mix, lead vox. Okay. And whenever it pops over to that, bam, all right, minimal. I am not, no latency from this guy. Pro Q3, and I might EQ for what it is. CLA 76, it is a low latency plugin. It does not sound amazing, but it gets the job done, and that's all I'm looking for. And then if I need a de-esser, I'll usually make this inactive because it's very rare during this process you need de-essing. De-essing happens from like the saturation process and all that other stuff that's going on. So, or needs to happen from the saturation process, and compression. But if I do need it, this is a low latency de-esser. It's just the waves. And then I use this limiter as like a volume control, basically. If they're like, yo, it's not loud enough, I don't want to screw with all the other settings, all like turning up the aux, turning up all this stuff. You're going to make it louder just by dropping that threshold down and leaving it at 0. And that becomes the volume control. No one cares about how they get louder. They just want it louder. That's how to solve that problem. And then at the end, you can go back and just put it back one plugin rather than you now changing your gain. So if you turn it up on the track, now you're changing your gain staging into all your compression. You're changing your gain station out of all your compression into all your reverbs, everything. I choose the very last place that I can turn that up and down and use that so that I'm not changing any, like, because like, well, the worst thing is you switch over from tracking to mixing and then the client's like, why are my reverbs all different? We're like, oh, well, you had me turn it up a bunch while you were listening and it was driving into those reverbs and they were sounding a different way than they do now, and etc. So it's like, this saves you from being stuck in that position and it turns everything down more uniformly across the whole thing.
What are your thoughts on using multiple compressors on a lead vocal?
Depends on the purpose and when you do it. I do like the fast attack, slow attack thing, 1176 into an LA2A, but also it's not for every vocal, it's like there is no for everything setting. If it was, then AI would already be out mixing everybody. But the problem with that is it's like people like Sean Everett and me exist, then you can't teach AI to get drunk while we work, So until it can, it's going to have trouble keeping up with the weird, inconsistent decisions that I make because everything is random and I'm just in a mood and I feel like doing things away. And in fact, even all the stuff I talked about today, I kind of prepared some of this so that I could show things in a reasonably fast manner. But most of my people know, like, I don't have any real presets. Like, I start fresh on every song, every mix, every concept, everything, because it's all different. One song makes you feel one way and you're leaning into that there, and another song makes you feel another way, you're leaning into it there. So
if you're tracking instruments and vocals in the same session, is there a way to route just the instruments to a stereo channel so you can do that subtractive EQ you did at the beginning to make space for processing the vocals? Or do you have to bounce the instrumental and process the vocals in a new session?
no, I do exactly that. I'll take I make sub mixes and I send them to auxes and stuff. There's like no latency really when it comes to like putting stuff out auxes. It's only about how your routing is going for headphones and stuff like that. So if I'm tracking for a full band, I can route all my stuff in a way that makes it easy for me to just put a band pass on that EQ for the whole instrumental.
Okay, and then boosting highs on EQ versus saturation or other methods of gaining clarity.
Yeah, so I know where you're going with this. I actually was going to show this. I forgot to show it, so I'm glad they brought it up. This is actually something I do a lot, especially in rap, because it's great. But I'm more into, a lot of people talk parallel compression. I'm not a parallel compression guy. I think the concept is cool, but I'd rather do parallel saturation because I feel like that's what you're trying to get from the compression anyways, is like that driven saturation sound that makes all those things louder and cooler. So I have a concept. I always label it shine, but when I'm doing vocals, I will always send my leads out to a Aphex Vintage Exciter. But anything works. Saturn 2, anything saturating, anything that's saturating, that saturates. And I'm going to put this on pre so you can hear what this sounds like. But anything that saturates pretty heavily, this might be too loud, so let me just, hold on, how do I got a lead. I just solo save this for this to work. All right, so, the wrong one, actually, this. So, and what did I changed this lead again, because I took off the stupid thing.
And a love that stays evergreen.
So I have this send that I'm doing this parallel saturation. Now I want to, how can I do, I can do it here. I can mute this. Okay, great. So this is what this sounds like just on Tone. It's super crispy, super bright. I drive into this a little bit. I'll even put a little bit more, but then I'm going to turn this back down, and I'm going to also turn this down.
And a love that stays evergreen.
Now, in the track, you'll hear how much this actually stands out now.
And a love. You're the one from my dreams.
Versus.
You're the one from my dreams.
And I just sneak that up subtly. Also, something I do on here is the de-esser, because you don't need any of that S from this again. Any place you can remove extra stuff that's going to conflict with your lead vocal, I always will. Again, I will just knock it all out.
You're the one from my dreams. I don't need a kiss, a frog to know it.
Okay, and then I'm just going to turn that down a good amount and put it in.
You're the
Now, when you have a bunch of reverbs and all this stuff that's happening with this lead vocal, having that shine extra parallel saturation really focuses to the center of the vocal, and it puts it right in your face in the middle of the thing. That's probably the best way I've found of doing, especially when it comes to rap specifically, but all vocals, pop vocals in general, that really in your face, like right here in the track sound, that's how they do that. That's how everybody does that. It's parallel saturation.
Do you usually put anything else in the master?
It depends. It's all dependent. I don't fix problems at the master. I fix problems in the song. I put the limiter on there because I want to be able to hear at a level of what everybody else is going to be listening to this eventually. It's very good to make decisions at a mastered level, especially whenever, but I don't put other things on there unless I'm trying to do a thing. If I want it to feel like it's like a tape saturation thing, then a saturator plugin goes on there. A lot of times a Pro Q3 goes on there because I might make some like mid-side decisions at the very end. But almost always when I make any decisions like that, I go back and find out what the root cause of these problems are and go back to that original thing to fix it. If it's like too much low end, I don't understand how people put an EQ on and then cut off all the low end. It's like there's one thing or two things probably that are causing that too much low end. Go back and fix those things. And then, you don't have to do a bunch of moves on your master. I'm always a get to the source problem. If it sounds bad when you first start mixing it, they should have tracked it better. If you're at the mastering situation and it sounds bad in the mix, you shouldn't be fixing it on the master. You should be going back to what caused that problem in the first place and addressing it there and then moving forward again.
Do you keep EQ and compression to aux tracks, send to a delay / reverb bus, and use extra effects as additional plugins?
Sorry, one more time.
Confused by this question. Oliver, if you want to just like if we didn't answer this already, can you just comment this question? Because I'm also confused by this one. Okay, so you mentioned having your own reverb rooms earlier. What's your process recording in those spaces, like mics, position of mics, etc.?
Sorry, people showed up and started playing my piano, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
So,
Okay, one more time. Question on the
you
question.
mentioned having your own reverb rooms earlier. What's your process recording in those spaces, like mic, position of mics, etc.?
I usually just grab like two stereo whatevers, you know. It doesn't really matter. It's all cool, it's all flavor, it's all tone. I have like a really long hallway that's kind of big. I have like all these things. I'll just put a speaker, just a, you know, a regular monitor out there, play it from one side, just use it. It's just everything is reverb, everything is reverb. You just, you know, like if you look deep enough on my TikTok, I once made a reverb out of a toilet bowl. Like I literally emptied out like the tank of a toilet and put a speaker and some contact mics in there, and I made a toilet reverb. It sounded awesome. It was like, you know, but that type of stuff is really unique. And anytime you do something weird in a song and it's like very prominent and sounds good, you get the chance of maybe of making a legendary sound that somebody else references down the road, and they're like, yeah, man, you know, didn't you know the Beatles used to make bathroom reverbs, and that's how they started, and like stuff like that. So it's like, just invent stuff. It's more fun to me to do it that way.
Would you recommend working with reference tracks?
I'm not a reference track guy. Actually, I take that back. I like to hear a reference track if I'm in an unfamiliar place. I like to hear a reference track from an artist if they have a very specific style that they're looking for. But I need about 3 seconds of a reference to understand what the basis is. And the problem with references to me is so often, I used to have this problem with my ex. She would send me these references and be like, oh, I want this song to sound like this, right? And I'd be like, well, I hate to tell you, but you're not Frank Ocean, and I have no idea how to make you sound like this thing. And she's like, no, just like, not the way it is, just the way it like sits in the track. And it'd be like, there's 1,000 things I can take from any song about what you want about that thing that you like. Maybe you like the smoothness of the top end. Maybe you like how it sits in the track. Maybe you like the effects. Maybe you like the reverbs. There's so many reference points, and why you like it is not going to always be the thing that I can identify from it right away, because there's so many options. Like, it's stuff like that where you're like, oh, I listen to Frank Ocean and I hear this, right? Or you know, and that's what I'm considering. But she's over here just thinking about, like, you know, instrumentation type stuff, you know? It's like, we're not on the same page. There's references always can drive you in a bad direction because there's so many things you can take from any given song. So also, I was like, I did that record. What are you talking about?
I tend to record a lot of vocal tracks and approach each section individually, as in doubles, backgrounds, etc. You mentioned not soloing things. Do you think this extends to sections as well, or is it beneficial for me to make sure all the background vocals sound good on their own, and then afterwards hearing them in context of the track and changing from there?
No, I mean, I think there's times for me, right? Whenever I solo, it's for me to identify the parts that I'm listening to. If I'm going to, let's just say I'm in the blind here and I see that there's these 3 stacks of vocals here. I need to know, you know, what these sound like by themselves. And then my brain is like, okay, I can hear what they sound like. Now I'm listening for those in the track. So the only time I ever solo is to identify exactly what frequency thing I'm hearing and I'm supposed to hear, right? And then it's going back to how does that sound in the track. So I think it's fine to get a little bit into like soloing stuff and like, but overall unless they're all by themselves somewhere, you're never considering what they sound like by themselves. You're only considering how they sound in context to the rest of the stuff in the track. So that's why I'm like, okay, that's the part that I don't get, is like people will literally solo all day long and then they like unsolo after like 6 hours of mixing, and they're like, oh, everything sounds horrible. It's, well, you didn't consider any of the other stuff that's going on. You just considered them all by themselves.
And I think you already answered this, but no EQ on master bus, question mark.
I do eventually usually do some EQ on the master bus, but it's like usually most of my master bus EQ is usually like an additive, like tone type thing. It's not it's never repairing anything. I'm never fixing anything back along the way. It's all creative decisions, you know? Like I said, if you are EQing on your master bus to fix things like too much low end, you're fucking up. You're fixing in the wrong order, and you're like undoing all your hard work. You go back to the thing that's actually a problem and fix that there. And then everything else always ends up making more sense because it's like it's cohesive.
Can you
Has
explain? Oh, sorry. Can
Go
you
ahead.
explain why you use the limiter opposed to another compressor for glue?
At the very end, I'm assuming is the question. I will use a compressor for some glue at the end stage. Usually I'll find myself with an SSL or a 2500 Fairchild, the standards, 33609, the stuff everybody uses. But again, that is the limiter is there for volume concerns and for like loudness concerns. It's not there as a creative choice yet, you know? So when I get to that stage, when I'm done mixing the whole song pretty much overall, then I might like, okay, and now I want to smush everything together a little bit more or not smush everything together a little bit more. And I make those decisions then based on those things. I'll do a compressor. In fact, I always almost have a compressor on, but again, it's a creative choice, not a choice of like fixing something. To me, again, that is still kind of gluing everything together. You can accomplish that way back by EQing everything into its own space and everything being there. It's less of a glue thing by that time than it is like, oh, I want this all to be together.
Okay, cool. So I know some of you are going to have to leave. I want to try to get through all of these answers. So we're going to kind of do like a speed round through all of
All
them.
right, all right, all right, all right. Lightning round. We can do this.
Is there a benefit to using an aux to send vocals to instead of a routing folder?
I just don't like routing folders because they never operate the way that I want them to. So yeah, they're fine. You can do whatever you want. I just personally don't like routing folders.
Okay. And do you have any other examples of creative effects to solve your problems in the mix?
Yeah, I mean, I do almost anything. I have a lot of like weird plugins just for the specific things, like like this what is it called, manipulator, or that thing's weird. Where's it at? Manipulator right here. This thing is just like, sometimes I'll just put this on for like 20 minutes and I'll start. Ooh. No, no. All right, all right, all right. I don't know what happened. Pro Tools died on me.
That's okay. These questions probably without showing.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll restart this and then we'll get back to it. I'm glad there wasn't anything incriminating or horrible on my desktop whenever it came up. Just like me murdering puppies, like, no.
I'll ask you these questions while it's loading, but I don't need. Okay, so okay. Does the microphone used to record the vocals influence how you mix them? What?
Absolutely, yeah.
It does. Okay. And then
Yeah.
what acoustic treatment is minimal requirement for a home studio to get a good, clean vocal take?
I mean, I think it just depends on the space. Like I've been in like hallways and stuff where it's like, well, this isn't going to work very well. But then, like engineering is about using what you have, not what you want or what you need. So at the end of the day, if you're recording at home and you're trying to get your vocals and you don't have any, like, there's no wrong answers. I flipped my couch up. I put 2 mattresses beside me. I did just like whatever it takes to get a clean enough vocal for the type of music that you're trying to work on and do. just do that. Like I've put blankets over people. I've worked in people's houses where we just have like mic stands with packing blankets strapped to them. I've done all this stuff, you know, even though I started at a high-end amazing studio, I still did all the bedroom, garage, basement stuff that exists as well because I'm a journeyman. I like to do all. When somebody tells me, "Oh, this is going to be a really shitty, tough session," I'm kind of like, "Ooh, tell me more." So I've done them all. I've done them in the worst situations. I've done them in the worst rooms. Just do whatever you got to do.
Do you have any tips to overcome demotitis when I'm producing my own vocals?
Yeah, so you gotta just like let it go, be like Elsa or whatever, and just let it go. You know, everybody has demoitis. Everybody thinks that, man, Shane Lance, who I do a podcast with, joke about it all the time, where people will be like, "Oh yeah, man, I just wanted you to like do what I had on the demo," and it's like you just paid me 3 grand to do what you were already doing. You know, like that's pretty crazy. Why did you do that? You didn't come to me for that. You came to me for my opinion, and my opinion is it's different from what you think your music should sound like. And you just got to remember, like, you're hearing it through that desensitized filter. I started this whole process off talking about being desensitized to listening to it too many times and losing that concept of what's happening. Don't let yourself get desensitized. Listen to input, ask people, talk to people, ask your mom, you know? I know you're like, my mom, she doesn't know anything about music. That's the best person to ask. I reference stuff to my girlfriend all the time. She has no idea about anything that I do, but I ask her what she thinks about stuff because I'm like, that's the opinion I care about as a person who knows nothing about music. If you're trying to please music dorks about the stuff you're doing, you are fucking up, you know? Music dorks will find something wrong with everything you do. You know, you should be over there trying to impress the person who knows the least about music in your life and make them be like, "Oh yeah, I really like the way that thing happened in the chorus that was like, rah, you know." That's what I go for.
Um, what has been the drink of choice today?
I was just having like it was like a vanilla latte martini, I guess is what it was, but it's early. I was just having a little, you know, I had to get through a class. I'd make a really good college professor, I think. Okay. I'm just trying to drink through my pain.
Back to tracking vocals, what is way of picking the right mic for the client? What is the way?
Yeah, the right mic is this is a Bill Bottrell saying, but the right mic is the one that's there and they have ready to use when they're the most creative. That's, I mean, sure, we always want to pick nice stuff. We always want to get the most expensive option. The right one is the one they have and are down to use and don't hate themselves listening to. It's like whatever. I don't like, I know a lot of people really get onto that, like, oh, but this one does the highs and this one has all this stuff and this one sounds this way. No, the right mic is the one that's like ready to go. I don't really care. I will record somebody on anything. I don't care. I have a literal joke microphones in my studio because you know, it might be the one. I don't care.
So just quickly, I think you said this earlier, but did you put the vocal line and Melodyne on the bus or on separate tracks?
Vocaline and Melodyne are not, they're processed plugins in Pro Tools. You put them, they're audio suite plugins. Well, Melodyne's not anymore, it's ARA, but it's the same concept. They're this for doing Melodyne like this would be like putting Melodyne before any of your plugins, but it's ARA, which is like it's integrated into Pro Tools now, so it's just happening in a order or whatever. But the Vocaline is an audio suite plugin, which literally prints it to the track, which is essentially, I guess, the answer. It's before everything.
Do you high pass the parallel saturation?
Not usually, but sometimes it just depends on what I'm trying to get. Sometimes I EQ the shit out of that parallel saturation because it's doing a cool thing, but it's too much of it in all the places I don't want it to be. That's a vocal dependent thing. Just if it sounds like it's giving too much low end, then yeah, I'll high pass. If it sounds like it's boosting too much in a place, I'll do whatever.
Okay, just to clarify, when would you decide when you separate plugins, what would you use on a bus or an aux or on the actual track?
Okay, super hard to be clarified because it's artistic, right? Like that's the whole point of what we're doing is the artistic side of things. I try and make logical decisions if I think, oh, this is a thing that I'm only doing on this vocal here. It's a modulation thing that I want to happen in a certain way. Like then it's like on the track, and then I'm like, it. Every single decision has to be like my brain isn't thinking this is the decision I'm making. My brain is thinking, how does this have implications down the road? What implications does this cause for the rest of the mix? If it's something I'm like, oh, I might want to put this like 7 tracks through this eventually. Well, then, yeah, it's going to go on a bus because then I can just start sending things to it on a bus. If it's like, this is the only place this is going to exist, it doesn't mess up any of my busing structure that I have already. Like, for example, if you put a reverb directly on like a track, everybody can see my screen again, right? If I put a reverb right here on this, on this track, right? Whatever, a stereo reverb, it automatically converts in Pro Tools, which is nice. I got this stereo reverb on. Now everything downwind of this reverb affects that reverb. I put it's going to the doubles track. The doubles track has all this compression and de-essing and all this stuff happening. So now I'm doing this downwind thing. I got to see how is this. So I can't do that there unless I'm okay with the reverb being affected by EQ, compression, all the stuff that's happening there. You have to like, that's all I'm considering is, does this screw up something else down the road, or is it just easy and faster? And if it's easy and faster and it doesn't fuck anything up, done, problem solved. That's where it's going. That's how I make decisions. Just whatever doesn't screw me over the most.
How do you decide how loud the vocal should be in the mix, especially the lead? Sometimes the levels feel different on headphones versus speakers.
Well, yeah. So that is how does one talk to the wind? Like it is the toughest question because it's never the same answer. Sometimes it's this vocal should be, usually it's a genre dependent thing is what I'm looking for. And I just try and compare. Now, I don't need to do this much anymore, but in the early days, it was compare to other songs of that genre and how loud people do their stuff and their other mixes and the stuff they've done before. And that's what I'm looking for. But for the most part, you're Pocahontas out here. You just gotta, wolf crying to the blue corn moon stuff. You just got to get the art in there and do it.
Okay, so somebody asked, can you recommend a mic to buy under $500? I saw you using Lewitt and was wondering, what do you think about it?
Yeah, nobody pays me for shit, but my recommendations are what they are. I think for like vocal microphones, there's a company I really like, the Muro Acoustics. They're awesome. They're like $300. You buy them on Reverb. Great sounding microphones. They're cheap. They're easy to use, and they're nice people. And I think that's probably the only like under 500. I love Lewitt. Lewitt does great stuff. I'm using the Connect 6 today. Oh, I can't show you because I'll unplug everything. I'm using the Connect 6 today to talk to you through this 58. Lewitt does good stuff. I think you just got to like look at that perspective of things. It's just like guitars. It's just like violins. It's like every instrument, everything. At a certain level, you can't get better. You can just get different, And I think now with the way that consumer electronics have come up, you can't really even get better than like a $500 mic. It's just different, it's a bunch of different things that are different for stuff. So I say, again, just buy whatever you can find that's cheap and sounds decent.
Yeah, and if anyone wants my opinion, I would say I really like the SM7DB because you could just use it for so many things and it's pretty affordable. Okay, so if you get too attached / desensitized because you listened too many times, should you take a break and come back?
Drugs. Yeah.
No, say no to drugs.
Oh, yeah. Take a break. Taking a break is a good idea. And then if you happen to do some drugs while you're on a break, that sounds fine too. Like you can split it up. It's not like a single, people can be diverse sides.
He's joking for the record.
Yes. Yeah, I'm absolutely making a joke. No, but for real, taking a break is important. I take breaks all the time. I try it's actually one of the hardest things about like me. I want to quit smoking cigarettes all the time, but my cigarette breaks are my get away from this person for 10 minutes and not be listening to this song all day.
You can also get a dog and have to take it outside to pee.
I can't do dogs anymore. It's too sad.
They are sad.
Yeah, how do you have a best friend that dies like every 6 years? Like I can't deal with that.
Can't talk
It's
about
too much.
it.
I'm an emotional dude.
How often do you chorus effects doublers? And we are running out of time, so if you could briefly explain how you use them.
Okay, chorus effects, doublers, all that stuff. It's minimal. I don't do wideners almost ever. I don't do a lot of like phasey, weird stuff. I will use doublers. I will use micro shift on certain things. Backgrounds can sometimes be really cool when you're trying to get that more electric feel of what's going on. But also, it's like the funny thing about the doubler is people are doing that after I just told you about the whole autotune thing where they're putting all the autotunes on the same thing and then they're adding slight pitch shifts to a doubler to then bring that all back in. It's like you could have just done that in the first place. You solved the problem 10 minutes ago and then you unsolved the problem and created a new one to make for yourself. So I'm not, it's like do what you got to do and everything, everybody, but solving backwards on stuff. I think the doubler is awesome though. If you don't have doubled vocals, it's a good way to try and induce some more double feeling. But at the end of the day, if you're overusing it, it starts sounding really machiney and shitty, so it fucks up all your backgrounds.
Okay. Do you typically track your vocals with the average loudness of a vocal, or do you typically go off of the loudness a singer will go and adjust gain based on the peak?
Yeah, no, I go for how loud the singer is and I adjust my compression based on that because that's the first step of the thing. It's like if somebody is really like I was working with that Lena something something long three name lady. She's a great singer. She does fucking monster vocals and everything. And I knew at no time was she ever going to sing like at a moderate level. So I am low pre compression pulled way back so that I'm only hitting when she's really cranking because she's going to really crank. And if I don't accommodate for that really cranking, it is gonna slam that compression whenever she hits it and it's gonna sound like shit. So I'm always adjusting to the singer themselves.
Okay, and I think we've made it to the last question. Oh, unless
Allah!
it's better to use individual plugin on a bus rather than something like CLA Vocals or Xbox Pro.
I I am not a big fan of like I don't like plugins that I can't see what's happening. I want to know what's happening and what it's doing because I don't that's why I don't fuck with Soothe or like Goldfoss. It's like you're squiggly lines, that's what's happening, squiggly lines. That's the information I'm getting is fucking squiggly lines. Like I need to know what a plugin's doing. I think that the CLA vocals can sound cool, but I want to be in control of every element and I can reproduce what that plugin does in every way, the spank button and stuff. It's like I know what that's doing, so I want to be able to just do that on my own and control it on my own rather than have something. Now, for beginners starting out, it's fantastic. You don't have to worry about finding stuff. And sometimes, make no mistake, people come into my studio sometimes in the middle of a mix and be like, yo, can you throw the CLA vocals on that thing? And it's like in the wrong place in the chain and it's doing all the wrong stuff and we're putting reverb before more compression and I'm getting mad about, but I still just do it because like if that's what they want, then that's what they want. I'm not going to fight with them about what they, take your ass down the street, let them fuck your head up. I don't care.
Love that. I think this is like a master class. I don't think anyone here is beginners, but I think of it like tomato sauce. Like one time I was working at a restaurant and the chef was like, how do you make tomato sauce? And I was like, I just buy a jar. Some
Right.
people buy a jar. Some people will buy tomato puree and then
Yeah.
some people will actually grow tomatoes and then boil them and peel the tomatoes and then make the sauce. So there's no wrong answers. It just depends on the level.
Yeah. I think that's a really great example of how to do it. Although it's more like ketchup, because like nobody makes their own fucking ketchup, and that's weird. But if you really get into making your own ketchup, you're like a connoisseur of ketchup, and you tell everybody about it everywhere you go. I'm like the connoisseur of ketchup of vocal chains,
Out here making chocolate. Guys, the process of making chocolate from the cocoa bean, it's gnarly.
I don't have time for all that stuff. Like I eat McDonald's because I'm too lazy. You know, it's like I don't have time for doing extra, but I will dig into, 60 plugins deep of knowledge on like which is the best way to do it. And then I'll not care and just ignore all the information I learned. It's cool to know. It's also cool to know and then be like, yeah, but I just like to fucking have a bottle of ketchup in my fridge. Like sometimes I'm not gonna make ketchup today. I don't have time for that shit. I'm just gonna throw the fucking Heinz on and call it a day.
Okay, and lastly, for the final record, there's no drugs in this class. Okay.
I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying, hey, anything could be a drug. Cigarettes could be a drug. Maybe music's your drug. That's all I'm saying,
Vitamin D, like the sunshine. Anyways, thank you, Greasy, for doing this class. Everybody, please give him a virtual round of applause. He smashed it. He was up until 4 in the morning doing a session, and then he came here like a real one and gave all of
Rock stars. See, that's the thing that people don't understand. Everybody thinks rock stars are rock stars. No, dude, that engineer was in that room that whole night with those rock stars, and then he had to get up at 7 a.m. to go do a string session. He's the rock star. Those guys are just trying to be as cool as he is,
But you interrupted me while I was trying to compliment you that you and you spilled all the secrets, which so many people in LA and successful people don't do. So I really appreciate you guys. I mean, and I really appreciate everyone coming here and buying a ticket. I really got your money's worth. I feel like I certainly learned so much. So thank you so much. And
also absolutely, you're welcome and all that. But I'm a pretty responsive person. Like I don't think, just on some personal theory thing, I think it's lame to gatekeep secrets and theories because it's basically just saying that's what you boil down to. So I'm a pretty like open person. If you guys find me on social media and you have a question about something, go ahead and ask it because I might just turn that into my TikTok post for the day or something. Like I don't ever get mad about asking questions. Just don't ask me in direct messages because I'll be honest, I don't look at those things. There's too many of them and they intimidate me and I get stressed. Just post it on a thing that's completely unrelated and be like, hey, I was wondering about this, and I'll probably answer it. So if you have follow-up questions or anything, you can find me on the interwebs.
Yay. Okay, thank you everybody. Have an amazing day and I will see you on the World Wide Web.
Do it. Thanks everybody.
Bye.